Okay, thanks everybody. I work at Babbel, and I've changed the title of the talk, but the content's the same. It was How Babel Learns, and we'll come to how ecology and user experience come together in just a minute. Okay, so who here knows who and what Babbel is? Okay, most of you. Okay, but for those of you who don't already know, or to put a little bit more color into it, we are a language learning app for the web, for Android, for iOS, and we teach 14 different languages in 7 different display languages. We have about 400 people working for the company worldwide, about 150 of them teachers, our didactics department, and that's our secret power that makes us so successful. We have more than 1 million paying subscribers, and we are the biggest earning language learning app in the business. So we must be doing something right. And hopefully we can do more. Our mission is everyone learning languages. That's not a sentence, it's 3 words. Each has a really, really important meaning. And we are for everyone. That's the first word and the most important. It's for anybody who wants to learn a language, no matter what their skill level, their age, their background. And we really try to live that every day. We learn together. So internally, we learn from each other. We learn from our customers. We learn from the market. And this talk is all about the many different ways we learn, and I have a bunch of different stories of things that we've learned since I joined. We make mistakes, and we learn from those too. And our communication is to get everybody talking to everybody else, whether it's by voice, by email, by writing a dissertation, anything they want to do. So this slide you saw during Sean's talk a little bit earlier, and it's here because we do see things differently. And I was talking to a colleague about the material that I'm talking to you about right now, and he thought that what I was talking about made sense to parallel with something that happened a long time ago, and it's very different. It's about ecology, and it's about what happened in Yellowstone, which is a national park in the United States in Wyoming, the northwest corner. It's a really, really beautiful place. And one of the things that happened there was that in the 1930s, wolves were completely removed from the park. Wolves were considered to be pests. They are carnivorous. They could attack children or people camping. And the problem was that the wolves actually had a really important function in that environment, in the ecology of Yellowstone. So what happened when the wolves were gone was that the elk, which deer are the bigger family, elk are part of that, but the elk were gathering in the valleys because the wolves weren't chasing them away, and they were eating everything up in the valleys, including the young shoots of the trees, the aspen, the cottonwood, the willow, and that was really a bit of a problem. You think, okay, they're just eating, no big deal, but anybody who's lived in an environment with deer around knows that they eat quite a lot, they make quite a mess, and they're really beautiful, on the other hand. And so the strategy that was being used for a long time was to cull the deer, or actually at first to move them to other areas, to introduce hunting, all kinds of things. And it wasn't really working because what happened then is that the beavers, who are the engineers of the wilderness, they dwindled in numbers, because what they do is they take the shoots of the trees, and they eat the shoots of the trees, and they take the small branches and build dams, which causes the water to pool, and in those pools, the ducks would gather and eat the insects and the small plants, and the fish couldn't really stay still in those pools, so they kept going down the river. And also the rodents that were in the fields were getting eaten by the coyotes that had been controlled by the wolves. So wolves gone, mice gone, rabbits gone, fish gone, ducks gone, but a lot of deer. So a complete structural transformation of this environment, this really beautiful place, became quite barren. The water was moving too fast, the banks were becoming barren, the trees were going, and it was turning into desert, which is an extreme thing, but that's actually what was happening. So UX, ecology, what's the connection? Here's one story. We have a lot of German users. Babbel is a German company. It was created by Germans in Germany. The research that we did was in German on Germans. And it's no wonder that the app is really popular among Germans. And the people who'd been using it the longest were using one of the oldest features in the product, which was the ability to add words that people found in their daily life to the reviewing system. Well, it was used by about 2,000 people. We have over 1 million paying subscribers. And so we felt that 2,000 users, the feature was hard to maintain. We were refactoring the reviewing system. And so we cut the feature after looking at all of the statistics of use. But what we found is that these people, these ambassadors for our brand, were really angry about the loss of the feature. And we really got burned. It was really quite embarrassing. These people were selling Babbel for us. And suddenly, one of the reasons that they loved the product was gone. And that was a real shame. Another lesson we learned was a little bit different in that we removed PayPal from Babbel. We had very few people using it. The people who were using it were sleepers. Sleepers are people who pay for the service but don't use it. Like, who here's got a gym membership that they haven't used in a long time? Hands not necessary, shame is not what I'm looking for. But what happened was the sleepers, a lot of them called customer service or wrote to customer service and said, hey, why did you cut off our Babbel? And they weren't using it, so we were really surprised. But we were able to move most or all of them onto other payment systems without having to restore PayPal. I don't remember the technical reason we didn't keep it. I think it was probably because there were too few people using it. So we learn in a lot of different ways, but we primarily learn from our customers, our prospects, and our proxies. So customers are people paying for the service. Babbel is a subscription. And there's a bit of it for free. The first lesson of every course is free, so try it, please. A lot of people think it's just the first lesson of the first beginner's course, but it's all of them. Prospects are leads, people who have expressed an interest, who've gone to Babbel.com, who've given us their email. And proxies are people who match the demographics and the interests of customers and prospects. And we learn in all of these different ways. From people who we know, they can interact with our customer service systems either by email, frequently asked questions, phone calls. If they've bought, they could, or downloaded an app. We've got the App Store reviews. We've got user research, which we do actually across all three. So this isn't fully comprehensive. We do different types of research. And I'm going to talk about those different types of research and give you some examples now. So first of all, we do user research, which is watching people suffer in the hope that we can improve the software. So we do a lot of that. We do it actually mostly remotely now. We moved research to the United States because we want to grow that market the most. But we tend to use Validately more than anything else rather than in-person research. Fewer cables, better results, much more, the video is much easier to generate because it's all stored in the system. But we also do a lot of surveys. And this is kind of a fun story from December of last year. So on the left, you see the old Babbel, and on the right, you see the new Babbel. We had established a new brand. I'm just checking time. Good. We established a new brand where we added 2 new brand descriptors, expressive and lighthearted. Now, the old brand descriptors are practical and nerdy, useful. That was what Babbel was all about, so we wanted to make it a little bit more fun. One of the criticisms that we got from people outside of Germany was that the product was too serious, so we tried to lighten it up. And the lesson that we learned is you can't really apply brand like lipstick. Brand has to come from within. And what you see on the right is lipstick. We used the new brand colors. We used the new font, Litura, which the designers, you can kind of tell they didn't love it. But this was the best of many different designs that we tried. So I wanted to put it out for preference testing. So we ran preference tests with people who weren't currently using Babbel in the United States. And this is what happened. Non-users preferred the old Babbel. And so we looked at all of the reasons why, because we got qualitative and quantitative. And then we also looked at the demographics, and I got this middle finger. It was mostly younger people, millennials, and and it skewed there, and that's actually a market we really want to get. So we went back to the drawing board, and we did this design. The one down there is called Electric. The names don't have so much meaning, but we had to distinguish between them because we came up with like several different designs, and they really didn't like this one as much as the old one. Now remember, these are non-users who are being surveyed. So we did it again, and we learned it again, and we did it again, and we learned it again, and we did it again, and we learned it again. This is really, really great that it happened during my probation period. So we went very conservative, and you can see the old one on the left and the one that's currently shipping on the right, and in case you cannot tell the difference, I've circled the changes. Logo, and one of the designers wanted to change the flag drop down from rectangular to circular. So what we did was we went back to the drawing board. Because you can't apply brand like lipstick, what you can do is you can take the brand and bring it through the product. So what you have on the right on this page is something that we haven't put out for preference testing at all, because we've done lots of user testing, and we will be doing A/B testing to be absolutely certain, but the new one is actually going to go live. It started to go live this week, and it'll be fully live, I think, next week. But what we did was we added some touches from material design. We also added ways to promote other areas of the product and new services and products that we'll be offering. And that was a really interesting and powerful exercise. Here's another project so that was surveys. We talked a little bit about user testing, and this is analytics. So we are doing a new beta. It's a language learning product for Americans learning Mexican Spanish. It was a language pair that we've been asked about quite a bit, a completely new concept, and we wanted to promote the beta, which is private. Next time I give a talk, hopefully we'll be ready to share it with the general public. But so we used email as a channel. We had a bunch of leads, and we sent out a lot of emails. We sent out 43,000 to boomers and 20,000 just about to millennials. And you can see that the boomers, the open rate was much bigger than the millennials, 20% versus 15%. And actually clicking through to try the beta, only 3% of the millennials did that. And we learned some other interesting things from these two audiences. So the next is that millennial subscribers here on the right, now the green is questions correct, the blue is questions asked, and the yellow is questions answered. But if you look at the ratio of green to yellow, you can see that millennial subscribers did a lot better than boomer subscribers. Come to any conclusion you want, those are the facts. We looked differently, and we looked at boomers versus boomer leads versus boomer subscribers, and you can see that boomer subscribers actually performed better than boomer leads. And the obvious conclusion is that Babbel actually works. Good. Okay. So back in Yellowstone. You were wondering when I was going to go back to that. So here we are. In 1930, the wolves were eradicated. There was a lot of discussion about why the environment and the ecology were going downhill, and a lot of consternation because bringing predators and carnivores back into the system was a risky thing to do. And I mentioned strategies for controlling the elk included culling and relocating and hunting and different kinds of things. But 14 wolves were brought back in 1995. And pretty soon, the deer scattered. It wasn't that the wolves ate all the deer, but the presence of the wolves gave the deer reason to go elsewhere to forage. Instead of gathering in the valleys and not climbing up the hills, instead of eating the things that were close to hand, they went all over the park. And so things started to grow back. And then when the shoots of the aspen and the cottonwood and the willow came back, the beavers came back. And they started eating them, and they started using the bigger branches to build the dams and to engineer the river a little bit better. And so pools formed, and the fish came back, and the coyotes were attacked by the wolves, and so the rodents came back, and then the birds came back, and the trees grew back. Well, the trees grew back before the birds came back and all of the other stuff. But then Yellowstone was returned to its original glory in only 20 years, and it's like a really great ecological success story. But we're not talking about crisis prevention. We're talking about engineering ecology, and a small user experience change can make a big difference. So we have a lot of people contacting Babbel for help with a lot of different things. And what we learned was that one of the products where we got the most contact was for our Android product. And the head of customer service came up to me, and he's like, "Hey, Scott, can we put the frequently asked questions in the Android product?" I was like, "Well, why are they not there?" And his answer was, "Well, they're not, and Android's in a freeze because we're refactoring the app." Now, Babbel's a 10-year-old company. The web app has been around for 7, and the Android app has been around for several years. And we were rewriting it because the code was a little bit fragile and brittle. So we rewrote it, and it was kind of in lockdown, but I convinced the team to add back the frequently asked questions. And people were able to get answers to their questions immediately. And what happened on the day we launched it, you see that cliff, that's 10,000 customer service requests going down the next month. And right here you can see the day we launched it, I guess that's May 29th, we had 80,000 frequently asked questions requests in the following month. And the interesting thing there is it's an 8-to-1 ratio, sure. Maybe people are looking through 8 different things to get an answer to one question, or they're getting a lot more information than they otherwise would have gotten through the customer service channels. But it was a really nice success story. And many thank yous from customer service who got to take more tea breaks. Okay, so a small change in an environment, click through this. Small changes can make big differences. And when you look at user research, you can do it in many different ways. You can do it with surveys. You can do it with user testing. You look at the analytics, A/B testing, and all of these different things together create an opportunity to make an ecological difference in your product and experience. Thank you.